Okay, so at this stage in our development, what we're going to be starting to do is to take all of those images that we sliced up in our little design that we created inside of Photoshop. And if you remember from the last video, we exported all of our slices, and those slices are now going to be turned into a website which we will build ourselves from scratch here in Dreamweaver. It's going to be a 3-column fixed pixel website. That's something that we have to contend with, and something that we have to remember is that we decided to make our canvas area inside of Photoshop 900. Now keep that in mind, because all of those measurements that we meticulously laid out inside of Photoshop with regards to the rulers and guides are now going to come to this particular phase of the application, and we're going to really pay attention to those things because we want everything to be aligned perfectly, just the way we had intended inside of our Photoshop document. Now, of course, we're assuming that you've done a little bit of Photoshop work before. If you haven't done any Dreamweaver work before, that is, I would encourage you to check out other Killer Sites tutorials on working with Dreamweaver or basic HTML and CSS skills. Nevertheless, though, even if you are new to everything that we're doing, I'm going to walk you through things from a very basic and simple understanding of how to work with Dreamweaver. So let's get started. First thing you want to do whenever you're working inside of a Dreamweaver based website is to define your site. And I can't stress how important that is when working in Dreamweaver. If you don't define your site first, you're going to run into all kinds of problems, and that can be potentially problematic and give you all kinds of grief. So first and foremost, what we're going to do is to say site, new site. Now if you remember, now some of you might be seeing the basic tab setting that you see here. You can work with the basics, that's perfectly fine, but you know what? Let's just go over to advanced. Look at that. One click of a button and you're already advanced. So the name of the site doesn't really matter. We don't even have to pay attention to the fact that there are spaces in this name. This name is only for the site definition inside of Dreamweaver. It's got nothing to do with HTML per se. It just allows you to choose from different sites a little bit later on when we're working in this environment. So why don't we call it the type site? We seem to be favoring that. And here where it says local root folder, what we want to do is to press this icon here and point to the folder that contains all of our information. Well, at this point, if you remember, I asked everybody in the last video to prepare a folder on your desktop or anywhere on your computer for that matter that would contain the images that we have. So what I want you to do is to select the type root. That will be the root folder for our website. That's why I asked you to name it root. You don't have to name it root. I just did that for educational purposes. So here's type root, and we're going to choose that one. Make sure you don't choose the images folder that's already in there. It's just the type root folder, the main folder. So we're going to choose that. A little bit later on, we'll talk about how to upload your website to a server. And in order to do that, you'd have to go to the category, not local info, where we're pointing to the folder that's on our local machines, but rather, eventually you'll have to go to remote info. Now, there might be something that says, oh, there's another site or connection named type site. Please enter a different name. Don't even worry about that necessarily. You can, of course, change what it says here. Could be type site number 2 if you had that problem, but anyways, doesn't really matter. I'll say type site final or progress maybe, like it's a work in progress. Then I'm going to go to the remote info area, and where it says access none, we can choose access FTP. Now I don't know what your FTP information is, but here's the most important aspects that you will have to sort of work with. What you're going to need to do is to contact your service provider. In other words, anybody who's hosting your website. So if you've bought a domain name, you've got a host who's hosting that website for you. If you happen to have an internet access that is given to you by some provider, oftentimes, especially where I am and where I live in Canada, we actually have a lot of IP providers who give you internet access, and sometimes they'll even give you, free server space. Sometimes it's just a very simple, small amount, like 5 megs or something. But nevertheless, if you do have a domain name, then you certainly have somebody who's hosting your website. So what you can do is enter in the FTP host information here. I could enter in mine. But this will do nothing for you, especially since you don't have this server. But nevertheless, I wanted to show you. You've got to enter in your FTP host area here. You've got to put in a login as well. And at this point, there's going to be a password that's requested of you also. So I'm not giving you my information, of course, but notice that's really all you need. Sometimes you might, if you have any problems with this, you might want to choose use passive FTP, but generally speaking, you don't have to worry about it too much. Now, at this point, you might want to test this. And if you hit the test button and you've entered in all of your information correctly, it'll say Dreamweaver CS4 connected successfully. So that's fantastic. You've got your server space ready and set up. Now, at the end of this project, when we have everything all ready, we can upload this and you can see what it looks like and how it works. But at this point, if you don't have your remote info, then just set this to none and just add the local information. Now, I'll come back a little bit later when we talk about accessing the server, and we'll enter in that information once again. So now that we're set up, you can see here that I have a little area where I've defined a number of different objects here. There are assets, there's the files window, there's some other things like AP elements and CSS styles, as you can see here, and that's going to be important for us. These CSS styles, we're going to be using them a lot as we work through CSS. But right now, all I'm really interested in is this, the files setting. So as you can see here, it's got a drop-down list of all the different sites that you'll have available. Now, if you remember, I had one already called type site, so I called this one type site progress, and that's just fine. And you can click on it and access more information. You can go in there and add your remote info if you wish, and that's all fine and dandy. But at this point, all we've really got going for us is the definition of the site, and if you roll over it, you should see something like where it's located, Mac HD, desktop, or if you're working on a PC, you probably got your C drive with the desktop here as well. So on my desktop, I've got these, and I've got images inside of it. Let me also show you that right next to the Files window, you've got the Assets window. The Assets window by default will show you all of the images that are inside this entire site root. So if you remember, I have an images folder in there, and what's inside? Well, there's the branding GIF, and there's the picture type 1, picture type 2, and picture type 3. All the same, all inside the elements that we need. So here's our files window. That's how you define your site root inside of Dreamweaver. And now that we've got the site root defined, let's go about building this website.